Have you ever walked into a room and felt like the universe just shifted beneath your feet? Like destiny was waiting for you behind an ordinary door, wearing a white coat and holding a clipboard. I'm Marcus. I'm 32 years old, and I've spent the last decade building walls around my heart so high that even I forgot what was trapped inside. I thought I had everything figured out: my career, my routine, my carefully controlled life in Chicago. But sometimes, life doesn't ask for your permission before it changes everything. This is the story of how a routine medical appointment became the most important day of my life. How a simple checkup revealed something far more significant than any diagnosis. And how the man who was supposed to examine my body ended up discovering my soul instead. This is my truth. This is my love story. The fluorescent lights in Dr. Ethan Rivera's office hummed with that particular frequency that makes you aware of your own heartbeat. I sat on the crinkly paper covering the examination table, my dress shirt folded neatly on the chair beside me, wearing only my undershirt and slacks. I hated doctor's appointments. Not because I was afraid of needles or bad news, though both made me uncomfortable, but because of the vulnerability, the forced intimacy with a stranger who would poke and prod and ask invasive questions while maintaining professional detachment. After my last relationship ended 2 years ago, I'd gotten very good at avoiding intimacy of any kind. But my company's insurance required annual physicals, and I'd already rescheduled twice. My assistant, Rita, had threatened to make the appointment herself if I didn't, so here I was at 4:30 on a Thursday afternoon, waiting for a doctor I'd never met. The door opened. Time did something strange then. It didn't stop exactly, but it shifted, like a record skipping to a different track. Dr. Ethan Rivera was not what I expected. He was around my age, maybe a year or two younger, with dark hair that looked like he'd run his fingers through it several times that day. His eyes were striking amber brown, framed by dark lashes that would have made my ex-boyfriend jealous. He had the kind of face that belonged in a museum: strong jawline, olive skin, and a slight tiredness around his eyes that suggested he cared too much about his work to sleep properly. But it wasn't his looks that made my breath catch. It was the way he paused, just for a heartbeat, when he saw me, the way his eyes widened almost imperceptibly and something unguarded flashed across his face before the professional mask slid into place. Marcus Chen, his voice was warm, with a slight rasp that suggested too much coffee and not enough water. That's me, I managed a smile, hoping he couldn't hear my heart trying to escape my ribcage. He approached with an extended hand. I'm Dr. Rivera, Ethan. Sorry for the wait. I was with a patient who needed a little extra time. His hand was warm, his grip firm but not aggressive. We held the handshake a moment longer than necessary, and I saw his throat work as he swallowed. Get it together, Marcus. He's your doctor. This is a professional appointment. No problem, I said, pulling my hand back and immediately missing the contact. I appreciate you fitting me in. I know I rescheduled more times than I should have. Life gets busy. He rolled his stool closer, pulling up my chart on his tablet. I see this is your first visit to our practice. What brings you in today? I explained the company requirement, and he nodded, asking standard questions about my medical history, current medications, none, allergies, seasonal, and family health background. His manner was professional, but I noticed things: the way his gaze would linger on my face when he thought I wasn't looking, the slight hesitation before touching my shoulder to check my reflexes, the way his breathing changed when he moved behind me to listen to my lungs. Deep breath in, he instructed, pressing his stethoscope to my back. I inhaled, trying not to think about how close he was, how I could smell his cologne, something clean and woodsy with a hint of citrus. Trying not to notice how his free hand steadied my shoulder with a gentleness that felt like more than medical necessity. Again, he said softly. I obeyed, and I swear I felt him lean in just slightly, like he was breathing me in along with checking my respiratory function. Sounds good, he said, but his voice had dropped half an octave. He moved to stand in front of me, our knees almost touching. I'm going to check your lymph nodes now. This might be slightly uncomfortable. His fingers pressed gently along my neck, behind my ears, under my jaw. His touch was clinical, yes, but there was something else, a carefulness, an attention that went beyond medical thoroughness. His eyes were focused on his task, but I could see the tension in his jaw, the way he was breathing through his mouth like he was trying to maintain control. "Everything okay?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. His eyes snapped to mine, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw something raw and unguarded there. Want, confusion, maybe even fear. "Yes," he said quickly, stepping back and making notes on his tablet with fingers that weren't quite steady. "Everything's fine, normal. I just need to do a cardiac exam and check your abdomen, and then we'll do the blood work." He was rambling slightly, which seemed out of character for someone who'd been so composed when he entered. "Can you lie back for me?" he asked. I reclined on the table, staring at the ceiling tiles with their random pattern of dots, trying to think about anything except how aware I was of my own body right now, of every place he was going to touch. He approached slowly, placing the stethoscope on my chest. His other hand rested lightly on my shoulder, and I felt the warmth of it seeping through my thin undershirt. "Heart rate's a bit elevated," he murmured, moving the stethoscope to different positions. "Are you feeling anxious?" "You have no idea." "A little," I admitted. "I don't love medical appointments." "Why's that?" He was still listening to my heart, but his eyes had moved to my face. "Too vulnerable, I guess, having a stranger see you at your most exposed." Something flickered in his expression. "I can understand that. For what it's worth, I don't see my patients as strangers. I see them as people trusting me with something precious, their health, their well-being." The sincerity in his voice made my chest tighten. He moved his hands to my abdomen, palpating gently. "Tell me if anything hurts or feels tender." His touch was warm through the thin fabric, professional, but somehow intimate. I watched his face as he worked, the concentration, the slight furrow between his brows, the way he bit his lower lip when he was thinking. Then his hands stilled. He'd pressed just below my ribcage on the right side, and something in his expression changed. The professional mask cracked, and what I saw underneath made my blood run cold. "Marcus," he said quietly, "I'm feeling something here that concerns me." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" He pressed again, more firmly, his other hand moving to a different position. "There's a mass. It shouldn't be there." His eyes met mine, and I saw genuine worry there. "I need to order an ultrasound, today if possible." The room tilted slightly. "A mass like cancer." "I don't want to jump to conclusions," he said gently, but I could see him switching into full doctor mode, his personal reactions being forcibly shoved aside. "It could be many things, a cyst, a benign tumor, an enlarged organ, but we need to investigate immediately." He sat down on the stool, rolling closer so we were at eye level. Without thinking, he took my hand. The gesture was so natural, so unbidden, that I don't think he even realized he'd done it. "I know this is scary," he said, his thumb absently stroking the back of my hand. "But whatever this is, we're going to figure it out together. I'm going to take care of you." Together, I'm going to take care of you. Something about those words, combined with the warmth of his hand, made my eyes sting. "Okay," I whispered. He seemed to suddenly realize he was holding my hand and pulled back, a flush creeping up his neck. "I'm sorry, that was." "It's okay," I said quickly. "It helped." Our eyes held for a long moment, and I saw him warring with something internal. Then he stood, the professional mask firmly back in place, though I could see the cracks in it. "Let me see if I can get you in for an ultrasound today. The imaging center is in this building, 2 floors down. Can you wait here?" I nodded, and he left the room, leaving me alone with my racing thoughts and the phantom warmth of his hand on mine. 20 minutes later, I was in the imaging center, cold gel on my abdomen. Watching the ultrasound tech's carefully neutral expression as she moved the transducer over my skin. Ethan had walked me down himself, unnecessary, but I was grateful and was now standing just inside the door, arms crossed, watching the screen with an intensity that had nothing to do with professional interest. The tech took several measurements, made notes, and then said, "The doctor will discuss the results with you. You can clean up now." Ethan followed me back to his office, and the silence between us felt heavy with unspoken things. Once we were behind closed doors, he pulled up the images on his computer, studying them with a furrowed brow. "It's not cancer," he said finally, and I felt my lungs expand for what felt like the first time in an hour. "Thank God. But it is unusual." He zoomed in on one of the images. "You have a fairly significant hepatic cyst on your liver. It's benign, but it's large enough that I'm surprised you haven't had symptoms. Any pain, discomfort?" I thought about it. Sometimes I feel a weird pressure after eating. I just thought I was getting old. He smiled slightly. 32 isn't old, says the man who's probably younger than me. 31, he admitted. Then his smile faded. "Marcus, this needs to be monitored. In some cases, if it gets larger or starts causing problems, it may need intervention. I want to see you again in a month for follow-up imaging." "Okay." He hesitated, then said, "I'm also going to give you my personal number. If you experience any pain, any symptoms at all, I want you to call me, day or night." That was definitely not standard procedure. "Is that normal?" I asked carefully, "giving patients your personal number?" His eyes met mine, and I saw the truth there before he spoke it. "No, it's not." The air between us felt electric. "Then why?" "Because I need to know you're okay," he said, his voice raw. "Because the thought of you in pain and me not knowing about it is unacceptable." My heart was pounding so hard I was certain he could hear it. "Ethan." "I know," he said quickly. "I know this is inappropriate. You're my patient. There are rules, ethics, boundaries." But he stopped, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "The moment you walked in here, everything I thought I knew about professional distance just evaporated." I stood up slowly, taking a step closer to him. I felt it too. His eyes widened. "Marcus, I can't be your doctor if—" "Then don't be," I said. He stared at me. "What?" "Don't be my doctor, refer me to someone else, because the way you're looking at me right now," I took another step closer, "I don't want you to stop, and I don't think you want to either." For a moment, he looked torn, and I could practically see the war happening behind his eyes. Duty versus desire, professionalism versus the undeniable connection that had sparked between us. Finally, he reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a business card. He scribbled something on the back and handed it to me. "Dr. Sarah Martinez, she's excellent. I'll transfer your care to her effective immediately." His voice was steady, but his hand trembled slightly. "But this," he tapped the front of the card where his personal cell number was printed, "this is for you, not as my patient." I took the card, my fingers brushing his. "Then what am I to you?" "I don't know yet," he admitted, his voice dropping to almost a whisper, "but I want to find out." I didn't call him that night or the next day. Not because I didn't want to, God, I wanted to, but because I was terrified. The business card sat on my nightstand like a live grenade, Ethan's number printed in neat black font, promising everything and guaranteeing nothing. It had been 2 years since David left. 2 years since I'd trusted someone with anything more than surface-level pleasantries. David, with his charming smile and his secret hookup apps. David, who'd said he loved me while building an entire second life behind my back. Who'd made me feel like I was crazy for noticing the distance growing between us, the late nights, the constant phone notifications he'd hide. When I finally saw the messages, when the truth became undeniable, something in me had simply closed, like a shop shutting its doors after a robbery, hanging a "closed until further notice" sign in the window of my heart. And now here was Ethan Rivera, with his warm amber eyes and his gentle hands and his complete disregard for professional boundaries, asking me to trust him, to open that door again. On Saturday morning, My phone buzzed with an unknown number. "This is Dr. Martinez. Dr. Rivera transferred your care to me and sent over your records. I have an opening Monday at 2 p.m. if you'd like to schedule a follow-up. Sarah." Professional, courteous, completely appropriate. I stared at my phone for 10 minutes before I finally picked up Ethan's card and dialed. He answered on the second ring, "Marcus." Just my name, but the way he said it, like he'd been waiting, hopping, made my chest constrict. "Hi, I hope I'm not interrupting." "You're not," he said quickly. "I'm just at home, reading, well, pretending to read, mostly staring at my phone." I couldn't help but smile. "Same." A pause, and then, "I'm glad you called. I was starting to think maybe I'd imagined the whole thing, like maybe I'd hallucinated our connection because I've been working too many hours." "You didn't imagine it," I said softly. "No, no." I could hear him exhale like he'd been holding his breath. "I keep thinking about what you said, about me looking at you." My pulse quickened, and you were right. I've been looking at you that way since the moment I walked into that exam room, like you were someone I'd been waiting for without knowing I was waiting. God, this man. "Ethan, I stopped, trying to find the right words. "I haven't let anyone close in a long time. My last relationship ended badly, and I built these walls, and I thought I was fine behind them, safe. But you walked into that room, and suddenly those walls felt like a prison instead of protection." Silence on the other end, and then, "Will you have coffee with me today, now?" I looked at the clock, 10:37 a.m. "Yes." We met at a small cafe in Lincoln Park, far enough from the medical center that we were unlikely to run into his colleagues. I got there first, chose a table by the window, and tried to control my breathing. When Ethan walked in, wearing jeans and a dark green Henley that made his eyes look almost gold, I felt that same shift in the universe I'd experienced in his office, like reality was rearranging itself around this moment. He spotted me immediately, and the smile that broke across his face was like sunrise. "Hi," he said, sliding into the chair across from me. "Hi." We stared at each other for a moment, and then both started laughing, nervous, relieved, slightly hysterical laughter. "This is surreal," I said. "Completely." He ran a hand through his hair, the gesture I was already beginning to recognize as his tell when he was nervous. "I don't do this, ever. I've been practicing for 7 years, and I've never, not once, crossed this line." "Why now?" I asked gently. "Why me?" He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing patterns on the table between us. "Do you believe in recognition, not just meeting someone new, but recognizing them, like your soul knows something your mind hasn't caught up to yet?" "I didn't used to," I admitted, "but Thursday afternoon in your office, I felt something I can't explain, like I knew you, even though we just met." "Exactly." He looked up, his eyes intense. "When I opened your file before walking into that room, I saw your name, your age, your basic information, and something in my chest just tightened, like anticipation, but bigger. Then I walked in and saw you, and I prompted when he trailed off. And it felt like the rest of my life began." I reached across the table without thinking, covering his hand with mine. "That's either the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me, or we're both losing our minds." His fingers turned, lacing with mine. "Can't it be both?" We talked for 3 hours. The coffee went cold, the lunch rush came and went, and we sat there, hands clasped on the table between us, trading stories like they were treasures. I learned that Ethan had grown up in San Antonio, the oldest of 4 kids, in a loud, loving Mexican-American family. That he'd come out to his parents at 19, and they'd been nothing but supportive, though his abuela had taken longer to come around. That he'd known he wanted to be a doctor since he was 8 years old, and his younger sister had a severe asthma attack. "I remember feeling so helpless," he said, his thumb stroking over my knuckles. "Watching her struggle to breathe, seeing my parents' terror, and then the paramedics arrived, and they were so calm, so competent. They knew exactly what to do, and I remember thinking, I want to be that person, the one who shows up when everything's falling apart and makes it okay again. Is that why you reacted so intensely when you found the cyst? I asked, because you couldn't immediately fix it. He nodded slowly, partly, but also because it was you, the thought of something being wrong with you, of you being in danger. He stopped, shaking his head. It wasn't professional concern, Marcus. It was personal, it was primal. I wasn't scared, I said. I mean, I was, but not as much as I should have been, because you were there and something in me just trusted you. Tell me about him, Ethan said gently, the one who hurt you. So I did. I told him about David, about the 2 years of gaslighting and lies, about finding out I'd been sharing him with half of Chicago's gay scene while thinking we were building a life together. He made me feel like I was crazy, I said, my voice thick. Like my instincts were wrong, my feelings were wrong. And when I finally had proof, when I finally saw the truth, I felt vindicated but also broken. Like if I couldn't trust my own judgment about someone I'd been with for 3 years, how could I trust it about anyone? Ethan's grip on my hand tightened. He gaslit you because he knew your instincts were right. Manipulators do that. They make you doubt yourself because you're getting too close to the truth. I know that intellectually, I said, but knowing it and feeling it are different things. What do you feel right now? He asked softly. I looked at him, really looked at him. At the warmth in his eyes, the openness in his expression, the way he was holding my hand like it was something precious. Safe, I whispered. I feel safe. His eyes glistened. That's all I want, for you to feel safe with me. We left the cafe as the afternoon sun painted the street gold. Ethan walked close beside me, our shoulders brushing with each step, and every point of contact felt like a promise. Can I ask you something? I said as we stood on the corner, neither of us wanting to leave. Anything. Why were you single when we met? Someone like you. He smiled ruefully. Someone like me has been working 60-hour weeks for the past 3 years, building a practice and trying to prove himself. My last relationship ended because he said I was married to my job. He wasn't entirely wrong. And now I think maybe I was just waiting, working myself to exhaustion because the rest of my life felt empty and I didn't know how to fix it. He stepped closer, close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. And then you walked into my office and suddenly everything clicked into place, like I'd been building this life and I finally understood what it was for, who it was for. Ethan, I breathed. I know it's too soon to say things like this, he said. I know we just met. I know this should be slow and careful and sensible. But I don't feel sensible when I look at you. I feel inevitable. He lifted his hands slowly, giving me every opportunity to step back. When I didn't, he cupped my cheek, his thumb brushing over my cheekbone with devastating tenderness. I'm going to kiss you now, he whispered, if that's okay. That's okay, I managed. He leaned in slowly, and when his lips met mine, it felt like coming home. The kiss was gentle, exploratory, but underneath, the softness was a hunger that made my knees weak. His hands slid into my hair, and I gripped his shirt, pulling him closer, deepening the kiss. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Come home with me, he said, his forehead resting against mine. Ethan. I don't mean, he stopped, laughing breathlessly. I mean, I want that desperately, but that's not what I'm asking. I just don't want to say goodbye yet. Come home with me. We can order food, watch something terrible on Netflix, just be together. How could I say no to that? Ethan's apartment was in a renovated brownstone in Wicker Park, cozy and lived in, with medical journals stacked on the coffee table and photos of his family covering the walls. Sorry about the mess, he said, hurrying to collect coffee mugs and a stethoscope that was draped over the back of the couch. I wasn't expecting company. It's perfect, I said honestly. It felt like him, warm, welcoming, real. We ordered Thai food and settled on the couch with a nature documentary neither of us watched. Instead, we talked more, our bodies gradually gravitating toward each other until I was tucked against his side, his arm around my shoulders, my head on his chest. "I can hear your heartbeat," I murmured. "It's beating for you," he said simply. I tilted my head back to look at him. "You say the most devastatingly romantic things like they're facts." "Because they are facts, to me at least." His fingers traced patterns on my shoulder. "Marcus, I need you to know something. I'm all in already. I know that's probably too much too soon, but I don't know how to be casual about this, about you." "I don't want casual," I said. "I've done casual. I've done safe and distant and protected. I want." "What?" he prompted gently when I trailed off. "I want real, even if it's scary, even if it means risking getting hurt again, because you're right, this feels inevitable, and I don't want to run from it." He kissed the top of my head, and I felt him smile against my hair. "Good, because I'm not letting you go without a fight." We stayed like that for hours, tangled together on his cooch, talking and kissing, and occasionally remembering to breathe. When I finally looked at the clock, it was past midnight. "I should go," I said reluctantly. "Or you could stay," he offered. "I have a guest room. Or, and this is me being completely honest and a little desperate, you could stay in my bed, just sleeping. I just want to wake up and know you're still here, that I didn't dream this." I kissed him softly. "Show me your bedroom." Lying in Ethan's arms that night, in his bed that smelled like him, with his heartbeat steady under my ear, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not just hope that this would work, though I wanted that desperately, but hope in myself. Hope that I could trust again, love again, risk again. "Marcus," Ethan whispered into the darkness. "Yes. Thank you for calling me." I smiled, pressing a kiss to his chest. "Thank you for making me want to." "What you said earlier about walls, I want you to know you can keep them as long as you need to. I'll wait outside them for as long as it takes. I'm not going anywhere." I felt my eyes sting. "What if I want to let you in now?" His arms tightened around me. "Then I'll spend every day proving that faith isn't misplaced." "Deal," I whispered. We fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and for the first time in 2 years, I didn't have nightmares about David. I dreamed instead of amber eyes and gentle hands, and a future I was finally ready to believe in. End of part 2. But can a relationship that started so intensely survive real-world challenges? What happens when Marcus's health scare becomes more serious? And will Ethan's demanding career pull them apart just when they've found each other? Find out in part 3, the emotional conclusion. Part 3, the crisis and resolution, 2,200 words. 3 weeks can change everything. In 3 weeks, Ethan became my morning coffee and my goodnight kiss. He became the person I called first with good news and the only person I wanted when things went wrong. We fell into a rhythm that felt both brand new and ancient, like we were remembering how to be together rather than learning it for the first time. I met his sister, Maria, who video called during dinner one night and immediately launched into embarrassing childhood stories. "He used to practice medical procedures on his teddy bears," she told me, grinning. "He was a very serious 8-year-old. "I was preparing," Ethan protested, but he was smiling. "He's different with you," Maria said later, when Ethan had gone to refill our wine glasses. "Lighter, like he's finally figured out that life is supposed to include joy, not just duty." I met his parents over brunch, his mother hugging me like I was already family, his father gripping my hand and saying, "You make my son happy. That makes you important to us." Ethan met my best friend, Chris, who pulled me aside after dinner and whispered, "If you don't marry this man, I will. That's a threat and a promise." Everything was perfect. And then the pain started. It began as a dull ache after meals, easy to ignore. But over the course of a week, it intensified, a sharp, persistent pressure under my right rib cage that made me catch my breath. I didn't tell Ethan at first. He'd been pulling double shifts at the clinic, covering for a colleague on medical leave, and he looked exhausted. I didn't want to add to his stress over what was probably nothing. But on a Thursday night, exactly 4 weeks after our first meeting, the pain became unbearable. I was at home trying to make dinner when it hit, a searing agony that drove me to my knees, my vision whiting out at the edges. I fumbled for my phone, barely able to focus on the screen. "Ethan," I managed to text, "need help." The response came in seconds, "On my way, calling ambulance, hold on, baby." I don't remember much of what happened next. Flashing lights, paramedics, Ethan's face above mine in the ambulance, his hand gripping mine, his voice saying, I've got you, you're going to be okay." Then the hospital, the emergency room, tests and imaging, and doctors conferring in hushed tones. When I finally swam back to full consciousness, Ethan was there, sitting in the chair beside my bed. He looked wrecked, hair disheveled, still in his scrubs from the clinic, eyes red-rimmed. "Hey," I croaked. His head snapped up, and the relief that flooded his face nearly broke me. "Marcus, oh, thank God." He was at my side immediately, his hand cradling my face. "How do you feel?" "Like I was hit by a truck. What happened?" His jaw tightened. "The cyst ruptured. You were bleeding internally. They had to do emergency surgery to repair the damage and remove the cyst." I processed that slowly. "Surgery." "You're okay," he said quickly. "The surgeon said you're going to be fine. But Marcus," his voice cracked, "you almost, if you'd waited even another hour." "Hey," I said softly, reaching up to touch his face. "I'm okay. You saved me." "I should have been there," he said, and I saw tears tracking down his cheeks. "I should have noticed you were in pain. I should have." "Ethan, you couldn't have known. I didn't even realize how bad it was until." "You were alone," he said, his voice breaking. "You were in pain and terrified, and I wasn't there." I tugged him closer, ignoring the pull of the IV in my arm, until his forehead was resting against mine. "But you came. The second I called, you came. That's what matters." He kissed me gently, reverently, like I was something precious and fragile. "I love you," he whispered against my lips. "I know it's too soon, I know we haven't said it yet, but I can't. I almost lost you and I never told you." "I love you too," I said, and felt his breath hitch. "I've been in love with you since that first appointment, I think, when you held my hand and promised to take care of me." We stayed like that for a long moment, holding each other, crying and laughing, and just breathing together. The next few days were a blur of recovery and revelation. I learned that Ethan had refused to leave the hospital, that he'd slept in the chair beside my bed, even though the nurses offered him a cot in the on-call room, that he'd called my mother in San Francisco himself to tell her what happened and that I was okay. He was very professional, my mom told me when she video called, very competent, but also very clearly in love with you, she smiled. "I like him, don't screw this up." Chris visited, bringing contraband pastries and gossip from the office. "Your boss says take all the time you need," he reported. "Also, Dr. Dreamy out there is fielding calls from your family and friends like he's your personal secretary. It's adorable and slightly concerning how good he is at it." But it was the quiet moments that mattered most. Ethan helping me to the bathroom when I was too weak to go alone, patient and gentle, and completely unfazed by the vulnerability. Ethan reading to me when the painkillers made me too foggy to focus on screens. Ethan holding my hand through the night when I woke up scared, his thumb tracing circles on my skin until I fell back asleep. "You don't have to stay every night," I told him one evening. "You must be exhausted." "I'm exactly where I need to be," he said simply. "Besides, I already requested family leave from the clinic." I blinked. "Family leave? But we're not." "Not what, not family?" He set down his book and took my hand. "Marcus, you're the most important person in my world. I don't care what legal documents do or don't say. You're my family, and family takes care of each other." On my 5th day in the hospital, Dr. Martinez came to check on me. She was warm and competent, and I could see why Ethan respected her. "The surgery went very well," she said. "The cyst is gone, the bleeding is controlled, and you're healing nicely. I'm going to discharge you tomorrow, but you'll need someone to help you at home for at least a week or two. I'll be there, Ethan said immediately. Dr. Martinez smiled. I figured. For what it's worth, you two are good together. I've never seen Ethan like this, so obviously completely devoted to someone. After she left, I turned to Ethan. Move in with me. He stared. What? When we leave here tomorrow, don't take me to my apartment and then go back to yours. Just stay, move in, be with me. Marcus, that's a big step. I almost died, I said quietly, and when I was in that ambulance, when I thought maybe this was it, all I could think was that I'd wasted so much time being scared, building walls, protecting myself from hurt instead of opening myself up to love. I gripped his hand. I don't want to waste any more time. I want every morning to start with you and every night to end with you. I want messy and complicated and real. I want you, Ethan, all in, no more holding back. His eyes were bright with unshed tears. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He kissed me soft and deep and full of promise. Okay, yes, let's do this. Let's build a life together. 1 month later, I stood in our bedroom, not my bedroom, ours, watching Ethan get ready for a family dinner. His clothes were mixed with mine in the closet, his books on the shelves beside my novels, his coffee mug in the cabinet next to my tea. He caught me staring and smiled. What? Just thinking about how my life has changed. 4 months ago, I was alone, convinced I was better off that way. And now, I gestured around us. Now I have you, we have this. And it's terrifying and wonderful and nothing like I planned. He crossed the room and pulled me close, having second thoughts. Not even for a second, I said honestly, but I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for something to go wrong. Things might go wrong, he said gently. We'll fight sometimes, we'll disappoint each other, life will throw challenges at us. His hand came up to cup my face. But we'll face all of it together. That's what partnership means, not that nothing bad will happen, but that you never have to face it alone. I kissed him, pouring everything I felt into it. Gratitude, love, hope, commitment. Come on, he said, when we finally broke apart. My family is waiting. And my mom promised to make her famous tamales specifically because I told her they're your favorite. I mentioned that to her once, I said, amazed. She loves you, Ethan said simply. We all do, you're part of the family now. At dinner, surrounded by Ethan's loud, loving family, I felt something settle in my chest. This was what I'd been missing, not just romantic love, but belonging, being part of something bigger than myself. Maria cornered me in the kitchen while we were clearing dishes. I'm glad you're okay, she said quietly. When Ethan called and said you were in surgery, I've never heard him sound like that, terrified but trying to be strong. He saved my life, I said. And you saved his, she replied. Before you, he was all work and no life. Now he actually leaves the clinic on time. He smiles more. He remembers to eat. She bumped my shoulder. So thank you for giving my brother back to us, but better. That night, lying in bed with Ethan's arm around me, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. The routine checkup that became anything but routine. The doctor who broke all the rules. The walls I'd built and the courage it took to tear them down. Ethan, I whispered into the darkness. I'm glad I didn't reschedule that appointment. I felt him smile against my hair. Best scheduling decision of your life. Best decision of my life, period. 6 months after that first appointment, we were back in a doctor's office, but this time for Ethan's routine physical. His new doctor, an older man named Dr. Patterson, listened to his heart and pronounced him healthy. Although, Dr. Patterson said with a knowing smile, your heart rate is elevated, anxious about something. Ethan glanced at me where I sat in the chair by the window. Actually, yeah, I'm planning to propose to my boyfriend tonight, and I'm nervous he'll say no. I sat up straight. What? Dr. Patterson chuckled. I'll leave you two alone. Congratulations. By the way, he'd be crazy to say no. The moment the door closed, I was across the room. Were you serious? Ethan reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Completely serious. He opened it, revealing two simple platinum bands. Marcus Chen, I know we've only known each other 6 months. I know people will say it's too soon, that we should wait, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. He took my hand. You're my home, my partner, the person I want beside me for every challenge, every joy, every ordinary Tuesday night. Will you marry me? I was crying, laughing, nodding all at once. Yes, God, yes, obviously yes. He slid the ring onto my finger, and I pulled him in for a kiss that was probably inappropriate for a medical office, but I didn't care. I love you, I said against his lips. I love you too, and I promise I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving that your faith in me isn't misplaced. You already have, I said truthfully. 1 year after that first appointment, the one I'd almost rescheduled, the one that changed everything, Ethan and I stood under an arbor decorated with white roses and eucalyptus, surrounded by family and friends, and promised forever to each other. Chris was my best man, Maria was Ethan's maid of honor, and when the officiant said, "You may kiss your husband," the cheers were deafening. At the reception, during our first dance, Ethan pulled me close and whispered, "Thank you for walking into my office that day." "Thank you for freezing," I replied, "for letting me see that you felt it too." "How could I not?" he said. "You were the answer to a question I didn't know I was asking." Later, as we cut the cake and toasted with champagne and danced with our families, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. The pain, the fear, the vulnerability, the courage it took to love again after being broken. I thought about the moment when Ethan had found that cyst, when his hands had stilled and his expression had changed. How I'd been scared, yes, but also strangely grateful, because that discovery, that crisis, had stripped away all pretense and shown us both what really mattered. Not the diagnosis, but the person who held my hand through it. Not the walls I'd built, but the man who'd patiently waited for me to open the door. Not the past that had hurt me, but the future we were building together. "What are you thinking about?" Ethan asked, swaying with me on the dance floor as the evening deepened into night. "Everything," I said. "How lucky I am, how scared I was, how grateful I am that I was brave enough to call you that first day." "I'm grateful you were brave enough to trust me," he replied, "even when you had every reason not to." I looked up at him, this man who had become my husband, my partner, my home, and felt overwhelmed by the sheer gift of it all. "I would trust you with anything," I said. "My health, my heart, my life, all of it, always." He kissed me softly, sweetly, and I tasted salt from both our tears. "Always," he echoed. And as we danced under the stars, surrounded by love and laughter and the promise of tomorrow, I knew with absolute certainty that this was what happiness looked like. Not the absence of fear or pain or struggle, but the presence of someone who made all of it worthwhile. Someone who had frozen during a checkup and changed my life forever. 2 years later. "Daddy Mark, Daddy Ethan, look what I made." We both turned to see Alina, our newly adopted daughter, holding up a crayon drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands. "That's beautiful, Mija," Ethan said, kneeling down to her level. "That's you and me," she explained proudly. "We're a family." "We are," I agreed, my throat tight, "the best family." Later that night, after Alina was asleep, Ethan and I sat on the couch, my head on his shoulder, his hand laced with mine. "Can you believe this is our life?" he asked softly. I thought about the scared, closed-off person I'd been 3 years ago, the walls I'd built, the trust I'd lost, the hope I'd abandoned. I thought about the doctor who'd broken all the rules, who'd seen past my defenses to the person underneath. I thought about the family we'd built, unconventional, beautiful, ours. "Yeah," I said, "I can believe it, because this is what happens when you're brave enough to let the right person in. And when you find someone worth being brave for," he added. I turned my head and kissed him, soft and lingering and full of gratitude for every moment that had led us here. "Thank you," I whispered. "For what?" "For freezing that day, for feeling what I felt, for being exactly what I needed, even when I didn't know I needed it. He smiled against my lips. Best checkup of my life. Mine too, I agreed. Mine too.